Thank you, Andrew, very much for joining me today.
Very excited to be here.
Okay, let's just jump in. Before we talk about the project, if you could just introduce yourself to the audience and explain a little bit about your background.
Yeah, my name is Andrew Hyde. I live in Boulder, Colorado. The Origin team is half in Boulder and half in San Francisco. I joined the Origin team about 8 months ago as employee number two. Stan James was the first one, and he was just a day before me. So been there from the beginning of the employees. I founded Startup Weekend, which a lot of people have been to in the startup community, and then have worked in kind of startup venture capital for the last 14, 15 years now.
Okay. How did you find your way into blockchain?
Yeah, I mean, I was casual. I think, as a lot of people, casually interested in it, and then suddenly became obsessed with it. And then, I had my aha moment where I ran into Josh Frazier, one of the founders of Origin, and he was talking about kind of building a decentralized Airbnb or sharing economy protocol. And so I'd been renting my house out and was kind of frustrated with that process and was just trying to be a customer, and then really got involved with Origin.
Okay, so for the audience, would you mind just kind of explaining the current system and particularly the problems with it and how Origin Protocol is attempting to improve on that?
Yeah, I think when you look at blockchain and all the features of it, you've got a couple things that are there that just aren't happening in real life. And the biggest one is that people aren't using it every day. So with Origin, we have protocol layer for a 0% commission for those looking for sharing economy protocol transactions. So say you rent an Airbnb, you're going to be paying 12 to 13%, and then the host is going to be paying 12 to 13%. And really that's there for central figure to make sure that you're having a good time, but also isn't quite needed, or isn't that high of a price isn't quite justified. So what Origin would be doing is enabling other companies to really facilitate that transaction, from identity to the transaction steps to escrow to the reviews to hosting the listing, and that can be built on for ticketing or host actual housing, or a lot of really crazy niche services as we're seeing.
So would it basically be any peer-to-peer marketplace? When you think like Uber, Airbnb, eBay?
Yeah, the protocols work best for sharing economy, but if you look at, we were the first project to do the ERC 725 identity, and you can build on that if you want. I mean, they're open and free protocols for anybody in the space to use. So if you need identity to work, check out our GitHub and feel free to use our code on your projects.
Okay. The next thing I'd like to talk about, because it's one of the first things that really excites me about the project, is the team and the partnerships. You guys have a fantastic team, and you have so many partnerships as well with some really great projects. Do you want to just, for the audience, kind of run through maybe a little bit of the top team members and then talk about some of the partnerships?
Yeah, so we're a pretty lean team right now, but we're also very I don't want to say stacked. It's weird talking about your own team in a really positive way, but I'm just absolutely impressed and honored to work with every one of them. Matt Liu is the founder with Josh Frazier, and those guys have been working more blockchain developers last 3 or 4 years in the space, both technical. Our newest hire is Yupam, who is famously one of the PayPal founders. We have John Hardy and Coleman Maurer, who both just are amazing with the partnerships and just knowing the space and knowing what the space can be for, the vision of the space. Mm-hmm. And they do a lot of the toughest work on the team. And then we have Stan James, who co-founded Legit, which is now part of Federated Media. So the team is mostly technical. I think I'm one of the only non-technical folks. And just a lot of people that have worked together for years on successful projects. I think every one of us has founded a company or an entrepreneur in some way. Mm-hmm. And then mostly technical and mostly actual, big scaling projects.
Good experience too. Very good experience. How about some partnerships then, particularly in the blockchain and the non-blockchain space? So I see there's several projects which are trying to be peer-to-peer marketplaces that have already committed to building on top of your protocol.
Yep. And we've got a ton of partnerships right now, but we're not launched. And so a lot of the partnerships, in a year from now, I would say that our partnerships are going to be 100x of what we have right now. But we have, Coleman's done an amazing job with our partnerships and just making sure people know that we're here and know that they can use our code, and our token as a 0% commission fee. So we have BToken, Jolly, Selena, Blocklancer, um, um, Spin, the scooter company, a Service Hero out of Asia. It's truly global partnerships. I think there's 54 on there right now. If you go to originprotocol.com/partnerships, you'll see them all.
I'm kind of interested to know about competition because I was looking up. Your business proposition seems so obvious. The idea to there are so many projects that want to build peer-to-peer marketplaces, and building a protocol layer is allowing them to do it with such ease. It's such an obvious value proposition, and yet I haven't really seen any competition in the space. Have you guys encountered much?
I mean, every time I see somebody that's really close to us, we, are quickly friends because we're both doing something similar, and then we either partner or support them in some way. So I can't name a company that's doing something that I would say is very, very similar to what Origin is doing, beyond being obsessed about the same market.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're open source and free to use. So a lot of them don't see a reason of really trying to build something, and we're doing a lot of the dirty work of protocol layers, a lot of unsexy code to get that to work. So I think a lot of the companies are just excited that they're able to embrace blockchain in a way without having to really go overboard with their technical team.
Now let's talk about the shared data layer privacy. It's one of the great aspects that I'm really a big fan of for this project. Do you mind just explaining it for the audience very briefly?
Oh, geez. Which part?
The impact it can have, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I was just in East Buenos Aires, watching a lot of the talks down there, and there's a lot of talks about kind of the idea of having a trust. How do you trust on blockchain? If you're going to rent out your house, you have a lot of trust built up in that. And so, we just released ERC 725, which helps with that. But there's a bit of that in the future that's going to say, hey, you're a really good Uber rider. You're probably going to be a good Airbnb guest. Right. And so, but you can't really share much of the details of your Uber rides because that's an invasion of privacy, but it's helpful to say, like, you've done 200 transactions without a problem. You're probably going to be welcome in another place. So it's brand new. Thinking about how do you kind of share that. And I think over the last 15 years, several companies have tried doing this and failed because it's really, really tough. So I think that I'm not trying to pump it too much, but I think it's something that Origin can really help with. And I think some blockchain companies are going to really adopt and benefit from.
Another aspect that, if I understand this correctly, is that with something like Uber, Airbnb, they have such a large source of data themselves, large data silos, that they basically have, in a way, a monopoly on the market. And by providing a shared data layer for other peer-to-peer marketplaces, you're kind of introducing more fair competition into the market, which is in theory much better for consumers. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, we're building a protocol layer that is going to be used by millions, and scammers still view this as a targeted area. So we've got to build the code to be able to deal with the really odd situations of when you have people that are just not genuine. And so, a big company can just, look for, they can shadow ban and they can deal with it in their own centralized way, but that's not really how we built it or what we believe in. So it's going to be different.
Very good. That brings us nicely onto the network governance. Now I apologize. I'm just going to have a little explanation. I want the audience to basically understand why I think this is so unbelievably important for this project. So bear with me. There is a question at the end of this. Basically, when new technology comes along, it kind of often promises a more open and fair system. Like the internet, people thought that's what was going to happen, and it didn't really happen, as we've seen. Like, we got big companies that just mine our data and do some very unethical things. So when people talk about blockchain and saying it's going to fix a lot of issues in the world, I'm kind of cynical in the sense that I think it can, the same way the internet could have, but it can also go down a very negative path in a way as well. So you guys talk about the fact that companies like Uber and Airbnb can basically just implement unfair decisions on consumers because they hold a monopoly on the market. They have got the first mover advantage. They gain such a massive network effect, and then they can basically just do whatever they want because you can't go from Airbnb to a competitor because there isn't really liquidity in that market. You guys are building a protocol layer for decentralized marketplaces, which in theory will give them fair competition. So kind of removes this element of having a monopoly. But in a sense, this is one aspect that I absolutely love. This is one of my favorite things about the project. But in a sense, Origin Protocol itself may have the first mover advantage and may gain that network effect to the sense that Origin Protocol almost has a monopoly on the market. So, in a way, you could almost say it doesn't automatically solve the problem. It kind of just abstracts it a level higher. And in a way, that could almost be worse because if Uber made a bad decision that had negative consequences as consumers, that's just one company. If Origin
Right.
Protocol did something bad, that would have an effect on dozens or even hundreds of companies. So for me, network governance is like the dividing line between creating a fairer system and improving, and potentially even creating a worse system. So now I've explained how unbelievably important that's the reason I think it's so important. Uh, could you kind of explain how you guys are carrying out the network governance?
Yeah, it's always an interesting thing because right now, even if you think that there's a monopoly on Uber or Airbnb, you can contact those hosts, after you've already booked with them,
Mm.
and then take that your next booking offline, and do it with a fee-free transaction of cash or so. We use Airbnb and Uber so much just because it's a little bit better and a little bit safer or a little bit more trusted.
Mm.
But there's nothing stopping me from putting up my house on, a website that I host and a booking engine that I build myself, and or just say, hey, just bring cash and here's how to book it. There's nothing stopping me from doing that. Especially do my own ads and do my own. It's just a lot more work.
Mm.
So network governance. It's like how do you both? We have to build code that respects our users' right to not be scammed. An efficient system, but not dictate what they can do with it. It's our partners. I view it more as a partner coming down hard on somebody.
Mm.
I don't view it as Origin coming down incredibly hard on somebody. I think we enable the tools of community moderation for sure, but I don't. And I think this is perhaps a little too idealistic, but I don't see that turning too negatively. I think that actually leads to proper community support, participation, and governance.
I guess the question then is how decentralized are you guys going to become? If it's a single centralized entity making a decision, then at the end of it, then it can still lead to some of the same issues that we encounter.
Right. Yeah, and there's a huge difference in between, is a guest allowed to book based on, the feeling you have about them versus is somebody allowed to put up an obvious scam, right? I think in the obvious scam thing, and personally I view decentralization to work best when there's, 10% leadership,
Mm.
where it's like, all right, we're going to step up, we're going to provide the support to
Yeah.
make sure that everybody has a really good time. Um, that's not 100% decentralization though.
No, I agree, but having the ability for say everyone to nominate the 10%, that's maybe not 100% decentralization, but still
Yeah.
some level of democratization. Is that what you guys are
Hey,
going to implement, or is
if
it
the
who's
users want to
making
put in
that
the
final
work to
decision?
do that, I'm down, right?
Okay.
But often that means the users are going to have to put in a lot of work and do a lot of dirty, dirty laundry. And your job of building a community and product is not to have the community fully take over all the risky fringe cases. It's kind of shield them from that in many ways. So, if the community wants to throw down and donate hundreds of hours to kind of review and build, make sure that the community is fully safe, that's great. But Craigslist, was a really interesting model to launch over the last 10 or 15 years, and that there was some beauty to the simplicity of it. And the community just, you need to be smart. Don't wire money to somebody for a truck you haven't seen.
Mm.
Like very simple scams, but did they ban trucks or did they ban all users or did they force a login? They kind of left it up to the community to be smart about how they interact and provided some tooltips, but you can't, fully take credit for users' actions.
There's an incentive mechanism built in, isn't there? I haven't read the white paper for a couple of weeks actually, but you are encouraging people to like stake tokens. So if they find a fake listing, I think it's right. If they find a fake listing, they can stake a token, and then people will vote on it. And then in order to list something, you have to stake a token as well. So basically, you have to stake your side of whether you think it's legit or incorrect, and then the whole community will vote, and you can potentially make money by doing that. So in a way, you are allowing the community to kind of have the final say on individual listings.
Yeah, there's a lot of options. I don't think those have really fully been defined right now. And I think that if you look at how the product grows, it's going to be kind of launching the mainnet in Q3 and then really refining and making sure that when these cases come up, that we have a really good way for community governance.
Okay. How about arbitration? So let's say I rented out my room on Airbnb or your equivalent of Airbnb, and someone trashed it. What would the process be there?
Yeah, it's every partner is going to have their own policies on that. We need to build the kind of central governance structure for that to be an option. So, did you accept or decline insurance? Mm-hmm. Right, and if you accepted it, then it's just an insurance issue. If you didn't do that and you've decided that the insurance layer should be on the community or on this person, it's like that's a one-on-one relationship. So that person's responsible for their actions. Mm-hmm. What can a partner do to kind of help make sure that you're at ease when you're a host? It's like, well, provide proper insurance or provide proper ways for governance around what to do if something goes wrong.
So that's going to be based on the individual peer-to-peer marketplaces, isn't it? It won't be built into your protocol there.
Exactly.
Okay. Could you kind of just break down the roadmap, like where you guys have been, where you plan to go in the future, that sort of thing?
Yeah. So we've been working. I think Josh and Matt have been working for over a year on kind of origin fully focused. And back in the day, it was called Zerogen. The zero origin. So idea, if you go to originprotocol.com, you can go down to see the roadmap. The product and white paper were released in September 2017. We had our alpha in December 2017. Q2 of 2018, we're doing our public beta community sale. We did do a strategic sale in Q1, and then token distribution launched with third-party apps in 2018 Q3, and then more fully decentralized services and governance in 2019. So some of the things you were talking about just there, I think are really kind of going to be defined only with use.
Okay. So it's very soon that you guys are actually going to be having the official launch.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at demo.originprotocol.com, at last night actually is updated with a lot. So we have identity fully working. It's a fully working site. You have to have MetaMask installed and get some Rigby, kind of fake ETH. But it works really, really well. And there's a big post on our Medium about it and about why it's so interesting.
Okay, I'll try to remember to link to that in the description. Yeah. So if anyone's watching this, you want to check out that demo, open up the description. I'll hopefully remember to link to it. Yeah. The next question, how about, I've always wondered about Ether and like token stability. So you guys, I watched another video and basically said you're not just accepting Origin protocol for payments. It's going to be Ether and potentially Bitcoin in the future as well. How do you address the token stability issue? Because obviously if someone books on a certain day and then they pay 4 weeks later, the price could be 50% higher, it could be 50% lower, who knows?
Yeah. I talked to a token economics PhD, which is really interesting. And she runs a group of 10 different PhDs working on token economics. And I described that problem. And even though they're PhDs and even though they deal with blockchain companies every day, this was a new question. So I think that you're going to find fringe cases that are going to be hilarious, and that like I never thought about that one. But that's the biggest one right now is what happens if, we agree that this is worth, 1 ETH to rent out your house next week. And then it comes around and suddenly, you as the host, it tanked. And suddenly that's not really, that 1 ETH is now not really worth it for you. So you're going to cancel and everyone's going to have a bad time. So you got to build that out. And there's some systems, there's the average system of like, I'm going to pay you the average price. So take when I booked and we'll meet in the middle. There's ways for us to provide tokens and governance to kind of help with that, just to make sure that it spikes too much. And we'll see. When you're building a product, you really need to connect with the customer and talk to them about it. And most customers that want to rent out a house or book a car, really their mind is fully working in fiat mode. And so it's really tough to take somebody from fiat to understanding that 1 Bitcoin is 1 Bitcoin. It's worth this. Well, I'm not selling today, so it doesn't matter what the exchange rate is. It's still worth 1 Bitcoin. And so with Origin, it's hopefully we'll just have there's a lot of talk in the industry about stable coins and how important those are. we're going to listen to the customers and try to build something that makes the most sense. If if for the first year we need to build it so that the fiat model that our customers are demanding works the best, we can do that. And just say, my house is $100 to rent, and when you check in, we're going to do that translation, when I check in, and then nobody really feels like they've been the price influxes is going to affect them much.
I definitely, I was just about to ask you about the stable coins actually, because it's this type of example where I can see them just having a huge impact on the ecosystem. There's so many, like, for this type of problem, you can't really solve it. You could, in theory, I guess you could peg it to the price of US dollars, but then people would complain because if Ether goes up or down, they've lost out in Ether terms. There really is no solution.
Absolutely.
Essentially stable coins.
Yes, I mean stable coins, or just realize you're going to win some and you're going to lose some, right? Like every single US dollar transaction I make could be pegged to another currency that I might visit in the future, and it's just like, well, I need to think in this mode for now, and when I need to feel like I need to move to that mode, I can do that as well.
Yeah, I think talking to people in the cryptocurrency space, that kind of makes sense, but going and explaining that to people in the real world, it might take a few years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And eventually you're going to be able to accept a credit card from a guest and then be paid in a fiat currency. Like that's totally a possibility that a partner can implement.
Okay, that's part of the roadmap as well then. Fiat currencies too.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that being built. That's just listening to customers and building things that they want. And I think that's something that is an easy fix, but it's also not the core of who we are. But that's something that they're going to say. And if you want to pay the 3% transaction fee on a credit card, like, why shouldn't we let you?
Yeah. Hopefully people will come around and learn that that's not the best way. Plus then you have to route that through a bank and they can basically do what they want. You would have yourself cut off. But yeah. How about business, relating to your business plan? What about adoption? How are you guys going to encourage that? Because obviously this is like a chicken and the egg scenario. You want to get people to list stuff. You want to get people to buy stuff. You don't get listings until people are buying, and vice versa. So how do you overcome that first hurdle?
Yeah, if you look at a lot of our designer Ari is just brilliant, and most of his designs are based around the idea of a chicken or an egg. So the joke runs deep and kind of how Origin builds. And we're fully open source, so you can hop on our Discord and see our engineering channel and see like the actual discussions that led to the decisions based on a lot of things we're talking about today. But you can also see all of Ari's future designs, which it's pretty fun to kind of look at the roadmap, but also look at like how's this actually going to look. And Ari's building a lot of things that are just brilliant UI aspects that other projects can use. Like when you send money, you generally have this like blank screen of death of where the money is out of your account, but you actually can't see where it's gone. And so like building tooltips around that, like, hey, it's a loading screen because your money is being sent right now. It's actually being processed by a bunch of miners, and this is actually how it works. And explain that to the users is super important as far as the industry goes. But it's something that we don't know how people are going to react to it until they get to it. So chicken and the egg, we have to figure out a way to get our tokens into users' pockets, and into their wallets and used. And so an easy way to do that is to have have people just start listing stuff. And once you start listing stuff and start then getting rewarded in them, I think that's the easiest way to get them into the system.
Well, building on that, you say like getting tokens into people's wallets. When people talk about private sales and public sales, a lot of people say that they think public sales are going to disappear because private sales, you get strategic, smart money. They can get you partnerships. They can get you so many more things than regular retail investors. But for me, one of the big benefits of having a public sale is you kind of gain an automatic network effect. By distributing that many tokens to genuine potential users, you kind of potentially overcome that first hurdle, which may be a hurdle for Origin protocol. So building on that, I know you guys have raised some money via a private sale. Are you considering a public sale in the future as well?
Yeah, I think let's just talk generally with projects on that. I think that you have to make decisions for your company that lead to the success or the future of the company. And I think that a lot of the ICOs that made really cheap decisions based on wanting to raise a lot of money quickly are really suffering right now. And so you're seeing a lot of companies in the industry see that and see that they had to return all the basically put their project on hold,
Mm-hmm.
take the last year of work and just kind of throw it out. So nobody wants to see that, and nobody wants to misrepresent what you're doing. We're building protocols for a better decentralized web, and we don't want that confused with market manipulation or anything that is illegal and we don't stand for. So there's a needle and a thread to kind of deal with that, and how do you best respect both your technology, the customers, the people that want to be involved, and the broader world that you live in,
Mm-hmm.
and worlds of governance. So you're having to deal with state, federal, national laws, and then you're also having to deal with many, many, many countries that want to be involved. We made the decision to only go with SAFT. So we're only dealing with accredited investors for our initial strategic sale. So we have enough money to build really interesting technologies and protocols. And we need to find ways to meaningfully involve everyone.
Mm.
That's definitely core on how we act and build systems.
Is that only US based? You say the accredited investors, or is that globally? They will have the same kind of standards.
Globally, yeah. I mean, I was just in Buenos Aires, and 1KX, which is out of Germany, was down there, and they're a really fun group. We on our website, actually, I don't think it's on there now, but in the next week or so, we'll have that pull request finally get onto the site live. But like Initialized Capital with Gary Tan and Alexis Ohanian, you've got big, VC players that were involved in the strategic sale. So it's truly a strategic sale of people that we really, really respected and want to have involved. And how do we go forward? We're going to make an announcement, right? And when that announcement happens is when we talk about how meaningful ways for people to get involved. But we're not building a product for speculators. We're building real technology that we want to see. And if you're a speculator and frustrated with that, like, I apologize, but we're not building a product for you. We're building a really cool company that we hope lasts multiple, like, for generations. And if you're looking for a one day flip, like, it's hard to properly
accommodate for everyone. Even especially that is 99% of the market as well. I'd say the majority of people are here just for the speculation.
Yeah. And we're, a year from now, you're going to be using blockchain technology every day and not realize it. I'm a firm believer in that. From supply chains to shipping to, safety to, things like this. You're going to be using it and benefiting from not having middlemen and not having high transaction fees. And I think that's the thing to celebrate. And, if you're speculating to have more money in the bank, you're also going to use that money to better your life. And why don't you just shift your mental model a little bit away from fiat and figure out how to better your day to day by using protocols like this. And I think that should be the focus. So I kind of run very, very, my temper kind of flares sometimes when people are just fully speculators and fully, pissed off at us. And it's like, no, we're building real technology. Mm-hmm. We're in a space. There's these other ways, to raise money and such. And some people are doing it really, really well and some people aren't. And it's hard to get confused with those.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. I understand it. As far like, I sometimes join Telegram communities and almost laugh at the ridiculous questions because everyone just wants money. That's pretty much it. Yeah. Whereas people building projects kind of can't get across the message that it's not our job to make you rich. It's our job to build the project we want to build, and we will make tokens available when we want.
Yeah. There's a lot of a lot of people invested in ETH early and have plenty and don't see that going on the ride that they already went on. So they're trying to diversify that. But I have people that, are calling me, 10 times a day trying to get involved. It's like, we're going to make a public announcement that's fair to everybody. That's a hard thing to kind of view that people really value your project, but also, might not be valuing it for the reasons you value it. Mm-hmm. I think that's more of a life metaphor.
Okay. Well, building up, you said a minute ago, I think in a year's time, people are going to be using blockchain without knowing it. So I have a question here. I was interested in how long you expect it will be until things like peer-to-peer marketplaces. So you guys are building the protocol for this, but the actual peer-to-peer marketplace, how long do you think until they, I guess, become so commonly used that they're either a competitor to something like Uber, Airbnb, or potentially even replace them?
Sure. Yeah, the whole market share argument never really is something I love talking about because it's, 1% of this market is worth this much and we can do that. And if we're taking 40% market share from them,
Okay,
you've got to
not so much the market share, more, let's say, for in order for people to want to use these peer-to-peer marketplaces, they have to get to a certain stage of development. So, like using MetaMask, for example, people in cryptocurrencies right now might be okay with that, but I can't necessarily see average people. Like, I can't imagine my mum using that or something, my dad using that. They need very easy to use systems. That's almost the first thing, uh, ease of use. So, how long do you think until, I guess, those elements have been developed to the point where they can, let's say that instead?
I always think about this. How long until we build something that thrills customers, right? Like I think when we launch it, we're going to have a product that thrills people. Provides a really good service, is safe, is efficient, looks really nice. You get it when you use it. At what point, do you see a bed and breakfast that only accepts, cryptocurrency that you use? Right? That might be next week, but the customers might be only our friends or the people that are watching this video. How long until Booking.com, has that special if you book at a hotel that only accepts ETH? Much longer. So you got to obsess over the user behaviors of one booking at a time, and then hopefully you're building something that you're onto something based on our web traffic and based on our Telegram group and or just general email every day. Like I think we're onto something big, and I think people really want to see kind of this origin platform, open platform, really work for a lot of things, from ticketing to cars to hosting.
Okay. You guys are built on top of Ethereum, aren't you? I'm correct in saying that. Why did you pick Ethereum? So, like Neo, for example, a lot of projects are switching to that because it's much more scalable. What made you pick Ethereum?
I mean, we're on Ethereum, but the white paper fully says that we need to see speed increases for this to work. Right? And I think everybody in the industry is seeing that. You can get that from staking a little bit more, or using, but like everybody knows that. I saw the CryptoKitties founders speaking at MIT the other week, and they're like, everybody's saying it's 1,000x faster than Ethereum. And they're like, our product is 1,000x from where it should be, but this is the speed in which we can embrace. So how do you build something when it can be faster or can be more fair? I think my very juvenile, I've only been in the space for a year, is that there's always going to be something that's like that. If you look at ETH Global and the development on ETH, like I think that it's my favorite community in crypto. I think that it's getting faster, and I think the major problems are being solved with proper governance. So I don't have too many complaints about that.
Right now. So you have the options to switch blockchains, do you? In the future, you'd be able to relatively easily switch to Neo or EOS or Hashgraph or something else that might potentially.
Yeah, we're an ERC20 token, so with the limitations of that. But if we find that we're a protocol layer, so if we find that something's much more faster, efficient, or works better, we're going to take that into consideration for sure.
I was interested in how that would potentially affect the shared data layer. So obviously that's one of the main selling points of the project. If you switch over to a new blockchain, would you be able to take that over? Or would that be something would have to be rebuilt from the ground up again?
I haven't seen a project that's done this and really written about it.
Okay, it's quite a new case.
So in theory, sure. But also there's a lot. But if you look at from January of 2018 till almost in April of 2018, like the speeds have gone insanely up in a way that you don't think that a massive system like that could really improve that much in 4 months. But I think when you think you have a problem and people care about it, you're going to see increases in that. And then you got to realize where you need speed and how to optimize that, right? So blockchain is not known or built for speed. It's not meant for serving up websites, right? It's meant for untrusted groups of people to be able to trust each other. To be a very slow database, not a fast database, a slow database. So if it's 30 seconds to make a transaction, so be it.
What do you view as your main challenges to success? Could it be regulations, adopting? adoption, scaling
Yeah,
issues?
I think we're really focused on the code right now. So I think, we just made another two offers to developers last week, and we hope to get them on board. But it's how do we involve and get people that want to contribute to open source, involved in a meaningful way. I think in the last 2 weeks we've had 45 people make pull requests on our GitHub, so we've got a pretty active community as far as that goes. So I think the biggest challenge for me is how do we continue that? How do we continue welcoming people that want to make meaningful contributions, not just speculators, but people that actually want to partner, build their companies based on that. I think that's the biggest challenge.
So the adoption side, trying to get enough peer-to-peer marketplaces to want to build on top of you.
Yeah. How do you provide an amazing experience for the consumer with a new technology that might be a little bit scary based on the news they read? I think that's the biggest.
Do you view your role as helping the peer-to-peer marketplaces? So they might build on top of your protocol, and are you gonna try to help them as much as possible, or are you gonna take like Ethereum, for example, kind of just steps back and says, we're gonna build the protocol, you build what you want on top? Or are you gonna have more of an active role?
I think we can. And I think that if you want to, we'll have people that can help you build out your website, right? So if we do kind of that consulting layer on top of it, but we're also going to be providing UI layer elements. So that's part of the open source library we're building. Yep. So what does that loading screen look like? Mm-hmm. Like how do you correctly check with the user what it looks like to send money without a middleman? It's kind of a scary thing, especially the first time you did it. I remember 5 years ago or so that I joined Kraken and purchased some Ethereum because one of my friends wanted to be paid back in Ethereum or not Ethereum, in Bitcoin, because they wanted to be paid back in Bitcoin for a flight or two. And I bought, and it was the worst UI because it just disappeared for like 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. Right? And if I didn't have them there saying, "Oh yeah, that's normal," I'd be freaking out. So, as a protocol, we have to think about the user and think about their how they use it and how do we onboard them to really be like, wow, that was amazing. I didn't pay any fees, or last time I paid 34% in fees. Mm-hmm. How do we get that moment more?
Yeah, I completely agree. Next, where do you view the project in 5 years from now?
Oh man, hopefully, used by millions of sites to lower their transaction fees and build better things for consumers.
Okay.
Yeah, hopefully just, we are that protocol, you don't think about how your email is sent right now. Mm. THCP just works. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that have to host it, and a lot of people that, there's a lot of money involved in that working for free, but it just works. Yeah. And there's a beauty to that we build up these open source protocols that work, and then we have to figure out how to deal with spam, how to deal with scams, how to deal with that. But, we're a protocol there, so we're trying to build the best code possible for the industry, and hopefully that product is used by millions.
Right, so our final question, if you could just have like a takeaway message for anyone watching this video, could be related to Origin Protocol, could be related to cryptocurrencies, blockchain, or just anything. What would you like to leave the audience with?
I mean, just a general life lesson is just always be curious.
Okay.
Right? So you have to have that level of interest in how things work and how you can make them better. We're in a really interesting spot right now where it's never been a better time to have a startup, or never been a better time to try to define your own future. Mm-hmm. And so if I see people that are curious and looking at the best tools out there to build, their own bed and breakfast software, Origin's free and open to use, but you need to dig into it. You need to figure out how the code works. You need to figure out how you can use it and see if that matches with your ethics and matches with kind of the life you want to live. And so I think just never, always remembering to be curious is the biggest thing. When you're hearing about something new, we can say that we're the best way for you to do this, but we don't know that for sure. In a couple of years, that was the best thing. But we know that we're going to be curious about the problem and curious about the community and work really hard to see if we can match those two.